Mike and Lisa with you on Bell Let's Talk Day, our 11th annual. And throughout the morning, we're going to be speaking with people from our community who have perhaps dealt with mental illness in one way or another and are nice enough to be sharing their stories with us today. Like our next guest, David Burman, owner of Mister Maid, a residential and commercial cleaning service here in Windsor-Essex. And David, you've been pretty outspoken really with how you've dealt with mental illness in many forms in your life, be it people, growing up or the challenges you have faced yourself. Good morning.
Good morning, Mike. Good morning, Lisa. Thank you for having me. And yes, I have been no stranger to mental health from a very young age. I guess I'll start off first kind of just explaining my initial connection to it. So I was very young, and my parents always kind of had that role of taking in the stray sheep in the family. So, any troubled teenager that was giving my aunt or uncle a problem, they were always kind of that voice of reason. So I remember getting picked up at 10 years old from summer camp and my parents telling me that my cousin had taken his life. More than, 20 years later, I've lost two additional first cousins to mental health. They've succumbed their challenges. They weren't able to get out of that rut that a lot of people have. So, yes, I've been, in a front row seat to seeing what mental health can do to a family. And it's a cycle reaction. It hits the individual, but then the parents, the grandparents, the siblings, the children. Mental health doesn't stop with just one person. It's a vicious cycle. And then in my own personal struggles, I've been in business for almost a decade now. Started very young with very little knowledge, and a business, whether you're in a great economy or a bad economy, it could take the toll of your mental health, of your physical health. There's a lot of negative components that mental health can affect your life. It's not just with your mental well-being; it's also your physical.
Well, absolutely, and talk about that. How some of your things that have come up with your mental health issues that did affect you physically. That's got to be really tough in your line of work.
Absolutely. So now more than ever, we're in a global crisis. There's many people right now who are out of work or who are just struggling to keep their business afloat. But myself was more just not understanding the balance. There's many people out there who, you're trying to support your clients, you're trying to keep your, food on the table for your family or food on the table for your employees. You're trying to ensure that checks are, your paychecks are getting cash for your employees. So there's a variety of components, especially for a new business owner. But when I was, in my early to mid-20s, there was just no understanding of balance. There was no understanding of self-care. So I was, working long hours. At that time, I had two jobs. I was working, almost a full-time job at Costco and then trying to grow my business. And I wasn't eating properly. I was over-drinking. I wasn't sleeping. And, those in itself are a lethal combination. But there was no balance. There was no really priority to take care of my soul. There was no priority of just feeling the worth of myself to ensure that, if my body and our bodies are like temples, if we don't take care of our bodies and our mental health being one of them, then, there's going to be no body in itself. And that's one thing that I've really come to understand is taking an hour for yourself. I have now made it a priority, and I cannot tell you the difference that it's provided me.
Those things you described, David, with just kind of getting lost in wanting to do right by other people and not paying attention to your own health. There's so many people who go through that. And even listening to you right now, I'm sure that there's people saying, well, you know what? I am stretched to the max. It's very difficult to turn inward sometimes, though, isn't it? To pay attention to yourself and listen to the cues that your body is giving you. So is that the message you spread to a lot of your friends, family, and clients?
Yeah, so one thing that, with COVID right now, and Windsor's been very blessed. But again, some have been more blessed than others. But if you look at Toronto, there's thousands of businesses that have closed because of the pandemic. So one thing that we're going to hopefully be working on with CMHA is to develop some resources for small businesses who feel like they just can't get out of that rut. I've been very blessed to been able to get out of my rut and to find great success in my business. And so I'm hoping with the help of CMHA, we can find resources or just basic tools to give to business owners to provide them with a sort of balance. Balance is the true key to that. So that's something that's been very important to me in sharing with my coworkers, with my staff, with my friends and family, is the balance and truly just finding an area of control for yourself. I'm one of those people where it's always, one way or the other, which is obviously a part of bipolar disorder. But, and I think bipolar disorder stems in my family as well, as many people don't realize. So it's just keeping that strong balance and keeping your emotions level. That's something that I've noticed really helps. But again, with what's going on in the world, it's just talking about the conversations. If you're feeling overwhelmed, or if you're feeling uncertain, or if you're feeling stressed out, especially business owners or people who are self-employed, you got to take the initiative. Sometimes it's getting out of your comfort zone and just making that call to your confidant, your family member, and say, "I'm overwhelmed. I'm stressed out. I feel uncomfortable. I feel unbalanced," and that's where the first step takes you into, sort of sorting everything out. It's just beginning that conversation that everyone is so scared to have.
Yeah, well said, David. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, and best of luck. That is David Burman. He's the owner of Mister Maid here in Windsor, and we're hearing from people for Bell Let's Talk Day today. A lot of people from our local community who have overcome and gotten help for some of their mental health issues. Overcome's the wrong word, Lisa, because I think if you do have something like bipolar disorder that David has, I think it's one of those things you're going to have to deal with the rest of your life. It's not like you take an antibiotic and it goes away, after a couple weeks or so, and then you're fine. That's something that's an ongoing battle for people like David, and he sounds like he's doing well now.
Yep, you learn to cope, right? And a great message that he had for us today.